Hey, Holly.
Hey, Dave.
What's going on today?
How are you?
Oh, well, on the What Difference Does It Make podcast, I'm having a good time, as we do every
Did it
time.
bother you that I answered your question with a question? You asked me how I was, and I said, how are you?
You immediately threw me off. I tell you, it's after 3 years, I'm still like, what? How is she going to respond to how are you?
Well, I figured you might have been sick of hearing, I'm great today. I am. And I am. It's genuine. Every time I answer you is, but I thought I would change it up by asking you the question.
Well, we're practicing our banter that we learned from Kat Goldman, who just happens to be in our virtual studios this week. Kat Goldman has written the book Off the Charts. It's autobiographical memoir. How would I say this? Go ahead. Holly, what is Off the Charts? What can you please describe it?
Kat Goldman, first, we should tell people that she is a Canadian singer-songwriter. So she's been writing and playing music for years, for quite a few years, and she has written this. It is autobiographical, and it's about being in the music industry, but it is. I mean, she talks about her childhood and, her experiences. So it's an autobiography of sorts.
Yeah. This is Kat Goldman in the What Difference Does It Make virtual studios.
Hi, Kat.
Hi.
Yeah, it's Kat Goldman.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Okay, so I guess we can get started by talking about your education. You actually got a bachelor's degree at a later stage in life. Isn't that correct?
I got a bachelor's degree at age 45 in English literature and American literature. I had abandoned my BA long ago in my early 20s and went into all kinds of crazy things like art therapy and shiatsu and yoga, teaching yoga. And I finally returned to school when I was 40 and finished it up. And I enjoyed it so much more later on in life, studying.
If that's the case, because you make a conscious decision, except, as opposed to when you're young, most of us just assume we're going to go on to university when we leave high school.
Right.
We don't know what we're doing, most of us. So you make a conscious decision at a later age to get an education, and that's admirable, and I think you enjoy it. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I loved it very much. I was the keener in the class. I was always raising my hand.
You're that girl.
I was that annoying girl. Yeah. It was me and a bunch of 19-year-olds.
I was about to say I think a lot of people probably feel like I don't want to be that person. I would imagine, even though you're raising on your hand, you were almost invisible at times because, the kids are more focused on themselves.
Absolutely.
And
they're on their iPhones all the time.
Yeah. And no one's looking at, why is this woman here? What is she doing here? They don't care.
When you're going back at that age, how did you decide? Did you just have a passion for literature, or how did you decide what you wanted to? Because the world is your oyster.
It's a really good question. I moved to Boston when I was 39, sort of on a whim. And the only way that I could stay in the U.S. legally was to either marry an American or go back to school. So I hadn't met any American to marry at that point. And I enrolled, at Boston University. They accepted me, which was incredible. And that's how it all started. Yeah.
And you loved Boston. Did you decide you wanted the city before the school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I had been there in my early 20s as well. And my brother and his wife and his nephew were living there at the time. So I had a bit of family there as well. So it was a familiar place for me.
And was this after reading these great American novels, you're like, I can do this. This is simple. I'm going to write my own book, right?
Exactly. I've read Dostoevsky. Why can't I write a book?
Hack. What a hack.
No problem. Yeah.
And how was the process? I mean, what age did you start writing? I guess you started, was this after you graduated from Boston University?
Yeah. So when I graduated, I had to move back to Toronto in 1 month. They gave me.
Is that, wait a second. So that's how it works? Like, okay, we'll let you in America, and then you graduate.
And as soon as you graduate, you're out of here. You've got 4 weeks to get your stuff and get the hell out of this country. So I moved back to Toronto, and I threw myself into the making of my 4th album, The Working Man's Blues, for about 2 years. and had a big concert, did the promo, followed that through. And when that was done, I fell into such a depression you can't even imagine. I thought, okay, now what? And what am I going to do now? And somebody from the music scene here asked if I would write a blog for his music website about my experiences as a songwriter. And I just went with it, and it sort of came together quite quickly. I called it the Disgruntled Songwriter. And every chapter was, sort of taking on subjects like, what not to do in a sound check, how to find your look, not to giggle when somebody asks you for your autograph, things, little tips for songwriters, and along with some of my crazy experiences that I've had in music over the years.
The book is a compilation of the blog, because these are all chapters from your book.
Yeah. So what happened was, once I had about 25 blogs, I thought to myself, geez, I should turn this into a book. Yeah. And I submitted I think it was about 65 pages at the time. I submitted it to a publisher, and they were the first publisher I submitted the manuscript to, and they loved it. But he said, you're halfway done. Can you write half more in 6 months, and then we'll have a book? So I set to work and got it done, and that's sort of how it.
And a year and a half later, you finished up that 6 months of work. That's usually how it works, right?
Yes, exactly.
So let me ask you a question. So when they needed more pages from you, did you go about it, because you already knew now that this is going to be a book? Did you go about it writing more blog posts, or did you actually have the intent of filling in a book?
By that point, I sort of already had a structure where I would pick a theme, some topic like producers or managers or, technical difficulties that you run into on stage. So it was challenging to finish it, but I had already sort of developed a structure. So it was just a matter of coming up with the topics at that point.
Yeah, it worked well. They've kind of felt like 3-minute pop songs in that it's brief. And, like, okay, here's the title of the song, and I'm going to, then fill in the blanks. Is that?
I'm so happy you said that. Yeah. I think people are really enjoying this book in the pandemic, because our concentration is sort of challenged right now. And the chapters are very bite-sized. They're about maybe 1 to 2 pages each. And you get sort of and I tried to make it as funny as possible. That was the key, was to make it funny.
That's what drew me in immediately. Like I was going to, because we do get a lot of books, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to try this. And it was these little snippets, and like, oh, this is kind of funny. I'm going to continue that. Oh, it's only 2 pages. I'm going to keep going. And, it's like an album's worth of material. Like, oh, look at that. All of a sudden, like, oh, this was great. It's really nice.
Appealing to those who are not songwriters. I know it's, your experience as a songwriter, but for us who we're not songwriters, right. Equally appealing, I would think. I mean, because it's entertaining and good information.
I think, yeah, there's something inherently funny about following, a dream, whatever dream that is, or trying to climb a mountain, and no matter how hard you try, you're always tumbling back down and, finding yourself sort of like as the fool. I think there's something universal about that, for sure, that even non-songwriters are relating to when they're reading this.
I have to agree.
It is almost a traditional biography in that, it starts like your childhood and the heartache and the pain and just everything that you go through. It seems like, based on what we've learned in your little bits, that you always loved singing and performing.
Yeah. Well, music came very naturally to me. It was just a part of my family from the time I was born. My grandfather played the violin. His brother played the violin. My mother played the piano. There were always cousins on guitars and lots of jam sessions in the living room. So I really grew up around music. I remember, back in the 70s when I was a child, I listened to, Simon and Garfunkel and Carole King, Gordon Lightfoot, a lot of folk music.
Gordon Lightfoot is kind of mandatory, isn't it, if you're growing up in Canada?
Absolutely, right.
And Joni, I would imagine Joni and
Yeah, Joni, I came to sort of discover when I was 19. She kind of saved my life, actually, when I was 19. Another epic depression in my life. And I just sat on a sofa the whole year. I dropped out of university and I just listened to Joni Mitchell records the entire year.
was it any specific album?
Ladies of the Canyon,
Yeah.
Court and Spark, Blue. She taught me a lot about how to sing, how to be a singer, for sure. Yeah.
What about that guitar tuning? That must have drove you nuts.
Oh, I think I knew one open guitar tuning at one point, but I usually stay in the regular tuning.
Was it the guitar immediately, or if you're listening to Carole King, did you go to piano? What was it?
My mother got me to take piano lessons when I was a kid, but I hated practicing so much that I used to actually bite the piano cover, the wood, the cover that comes down on the keys, so you can actually see my teeth marks in her piano. And I think after a while, my mom said, "You know what? Forget it. If she's not enjoying this, and it's one of my greatest regrets. I wish I had followed it through, because I think I would have had more of a palette to choose from in my writing. I tend to I use both for songwriting, piano and guitar. But then later I went to the guitar at age 19 and started to learn that instrument.
I was going to say it's easier to busk in with a guitar than a piano.
True. Yes, that's true. You can travel with a guitar. Very true. There's a chapter on busking as well in the book.
Would you still recommend busking for burgeoning rock stars?
I think it's a good thing to do if you're sort of learning how to become a songwriter. It's sort of a good training. But in the long run, you don't want to be sort of competing with cars and buses and crazy people coming over to take your money and freezing cold weather. And it's hard. Busking is really hard.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have a sound system, because it really challenges your vocals, which might be a good thing in the long run. Actually, it could strengthen your voice.
Toughens you up mentally, I would imagine, too.
Yeah. For sure.
How long would you say you did it for, the period of time that you did it? Was it just for fun? It's obviously a conscious decision, because I think you said you have to apply for a license and you're competing against other people.
Yeah, in Toronto, you actually have to audition and get a license to busk, which I think is crazy. I mean, everybody should be able to pull out an instrument and play, and have creativity be encouraged in public spaces. I've never understood that. But when I lived in Boston in the early 90s, busking was in Harvard Square was a sign of respect. People would compete for a place in Harvard Square to busk. And sometimes, you'd see buskers 10 feet apart playing on the sidewalk, and some really, really talented people as well. So, I mean, luckily I never had to resort to busking for money, but, it's fun. It was fun.
Yeah.
What is harder, busking or being an opening act? Especially when they're waiting for Dar Williams to come on or whoever.
Right. Well, as I said in my book, I sort of almost made a career off of being the opening act. I opened for a lot of people, and what it does is it really challenges you to step up your game, because you know that the audience of the person you're opening for are expecting high quality stuff. So when I knew that I was opening for a high profile act, I would, rehearse for weeks in advance. And the pressure was really on to impress them, to try to win them over, because that's a built-in audience right there. Yeah, it was very challenging in a different way. Busking is a little more casual. You can make mistakes, I guess, when you're busking.
You spoke pretty positively about being an opening act in the book.
Yeah, I had some great experiences. I once opened for Al Stewart at the Bottom Line. That was a great honor. And it was right before the Bottom Line closed for good. an amazing place to play. And so that was very exciting. And one of his audience members in the front row handed me a note at the end of my set that said Year of the Cat, K-A-T, which was a play on his hit, Year of the Cat, C-A-T, which, you know, told me I was accepted, which was, you know, really nice. And opening for Dar Williams is always a great experience. Her fans are just so lovely, and she's so lovely. And actually, Dar Williams was one of my original songwriting heroes. So my music is not so far off from hers. So yeah, that's always been a great experience.
Are you still songwriting? Are you still keeping that muscle going? I also finished Jeff Tweedy's book, Write One Song, I think it's called. But he kind of touches on like, just do it.
Songwriting for me, although a few of my songs came out just really quickly, and it was like they were already done, you know, it was sort of one of those magical experiences. But for the most part, I have found songwriting to be excruciating.
Yeah.
I find it very difficult, and I really push myself, and I have to write tons and tons of bad songs to get to a good one, which is why, you know, it's sometimes 7 years between albums for me, because it takes so long for me to get enough material for an album. These days, the only song I've written was a song called the Book Release Song, which was a song I wrote to promote my book. But aside from that, I've been more focused on writing books than writing songs. I find it hard to do both at the same time. But I think I will write more songs in the future. It's just hasn't come yet for me.
Are they more about your life, or are you touching on original stories now, or what interests you?
For the book?
Yeah. Well, you say you're writing now.
The next book. Oh, well, the next book, you know, some people have been requesting a sequel to this one, to Off the Charts. And thank you. So that's sort of under consideration. I started writing a second book, and it was kind of like about my sex life. Do you think that'll sell?
I hear sex sells. That's just there's something I've heard off and on.
But don't tell my parents that. They'll be very upset to hear it. They've been asking, "What's your new book about?" Not telling.
And you write it in the same format, the same small bite. Yeah, people will line up for it.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so.
Is this so? We'll hear more about this rock star person that shall forever remain nameless. That apparently you're discouraging dating rock stars, and why is this?
My advice on dating rock stars is don't do it. They're so selfish. You know, you wear like a cool vintage dress in front of them, and they're all into you and stuff, but then they see a hotter woman walk into the room, and suddenly their attention is gone from you. You know, you can never really hang on to a guy like that, I don't think.
Rock star as opposed to a musician. I mean, you know.
They're all the same. That's kind of crass, but you know, it's funny. I've never really dated. I've dated a few musicians, but I've never had a relationship with a musician. And everybody's always surprised by that, because I guess they figure you're a songwriter. Wouldn't you just go out with other musicians? But I don't know. I remember asking this songwriter I know in Toronto out one time. I was always bold in asking guys out. So I asked him out. I said, "Would you like to go to dinner with me sometime?" He was a cool guy, guitar player, nice guy. And he rejected me. And then about 2 months later, we were playing a gig together in Toronto one night. And in the audience was his new girlfriend, who was sitting there knitting. She was knitting a sweater. And I thought, this is who you chose over me? Some wafy girl that's knitting a sweater, and she wasn't even paying attention to his show, you know? I thought, what is wrong with these guys? Gee.
There's no accounting for this sometimes, I think.
Yeah. What about me? Aren't I cool?
All right. Learning a lot about Kat Goldman. She is the author of the book, Off the Charts. We're going to be right back.
Welcome back to the What Difference Does It Make podcast and our guest, Kat Goldman.
Well, apparently you are cool. You were wooed by a high-profile manager. You talked about that in the book. What is that like when, like, okay, suddenly someone's really into what I'm doing and wants to help me get to the next level?
Yeah, good question. That was mind-blowing. I somehow got connected to Ron Fierstein, who was manager to Sean Colvin and Suzanne Vega, Dar Williams. I think Mary Chapin Carpenter he managed at one point. He was in New York City, and I was living in Toronto at the time, and he got a hold of my first album, The Great Disappearing Act, and said he loved it and that he wanted to come check out one of my shows and where would I be playing in the next month. Oh my God. So I told him, the dates that I had lined up, and I figured he'd come to Toronto, to come see me. Wouldn't you know, I did a show in Buffalo one night and he showed up. He flew from New York City to Buffalo to catch my show that night, which was just, it was just over the top. And he was the nicest guy. And he said, we really love your album and we'd love you to sign a 3-year contract with us. And what that means is we'll have you come to New York to do some showcases in front of labels and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And that's exactly what they did. And I started to frequent New York, and I did some really fun shows in Manhattan and Brooklyn. It was a really fun time in my life. A little nerve-wracking, when you know that somebody from Vanguard or Columbia Records is sitting in your audience. But they never were interested in signing me. And I always think it's because I never wore the right outfit. But I think the truth is that, partly they had just stopped signing artists at that point. The music industry was changing so much.
What year was this around?
This was in 2001.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a weird time. It was a weird time in the music business.
That was teen pop was, like Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears type thing. And like,
but also different formats, different,
how are we going to,
distribution and
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in all fairness, I was not ready yet as a performer. I think I had a long way to go to become stronger and more confident. I never had the confidence that I saw I remember I saw, is it Regina Spektor?
Regina Spektor.
Yeah, she's amazing. And I saw, we both did a show at Club Passy many years ago. And I was watching her walk on stage and she had the greatest outfit on. She had this cool blazer. I thought she's got the look, she's got the talent. And she had the confidence, she just exuded confidence. I never felt that way. I was always very shy and found it hard to believe in myself. So that's been a process. I'd say now it would be much different. I feel a lot more confident when I go on stage now.
That was one of your chapters is banter. I really appreciate an artist who is comfortable enough to kind of just, so how you doing? What's going on? Kind of taking the temperature of the audience or whatever's on their mind, learn a little bit more about their personality, more of a connection. That's always helpful. And tuning at the same time. I never understood how someone can tune and talk about nothingness.
At the same time. I know. It's such a talent. Paul Simon's very good at that.
Yeah, you should be more like Paul Simon.
Banter is important, very important as a way to connect with your audience. My advice is not to go on too long though, because they'll start to fall asleep or boo you off the stage. But I used to write little notes to myself on the guitar about what I would talk about in between songs, as a way to transition into a song. So I wrote a chapter on how long should your banter be. Too long is not good, but it is nice to tell a few jokes or introduce a song, let the audience get to know your personality a little better.
You hear about artists who are shy, particularly shy, that don't feel comfortable doing it, and I appreciate that also, because if it doesn't come across as genuine, you want to know them. You want to feel the personality, but you can tell if it's not, and that's part of the whole experience, I think.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's true. Your fans want to know who you really are.
I think actually when artists make mistakes on stage and just play it off, I think that makes it even more endearing.
Yeah.
You know, just
Yeah.
like, oh, they're human.
Yeah, it's human. And if you make a mistake, which I also talk about in the book, you have a lot of choices. You could say, you could stop and go, you know what, forget this. Do you want to sing Kumbaya? Or you could, sort of get paralyzed by it. But the best thing to do is to just keep going and, as if it didn't happen. It's sort of interesting when people make a mistake, isn't it? Like we sort of become fascinated in that moment as to how you recover from that. And, it shows that you're human.
I think the artist seems to take it harder than the audience. The audience goes, most of the time we don't even notice, but also who cares?
Yeah, it's
Really, who cares?
Right.
Yeah.
It's a show. It's a show. You roll with it.
You roll with it. You roll with it. That's right. You roll with it.
Along the same lines with banter, you did a chapter on your look.
Right. Which I still haven't found. I'm still looking for it. If you have any suggestions, let me know.
I like some of the things you tried. I like the Cher wig and
the Cher wig. I tried this. That was perplexing. Everyone was like, what does it mean? I had no idea what it meant. I just thought, cool, it could be a look, but there was really no direct connection to anything.
Yeah.
With the Cher wig. Although I've always wished I could have hair like that, big curly hair. Yeah, when you're shopping yourself back in the day to record labels and stuff like that, I think there was this feeling, this pressure that you had to have your look figured out. And what was that going to be? And I remember I went to one show in this big white lace tutu. No idea why, other than it was visually kind of interesting, the white and the puffiness. And, I got a lot of heck from my bandmate for that one. He was like, my friends thought you looked ridiculous. What were you wearing that tutu for? And, he wasn't very nice about it. Thank God I fired him. But I think the thing about being a musician is that you have to just be yourself, and musicians are really interesting people. They're quirky, they're different, they're their own people, and so you have to dress the way it makes you feel the most like who you are and what you want to express, and let your freak flag fly. That would be my advice.
It's like being human, just going out. When you're going out on the town, you want to feel comfortable in what you're wearing. So you wear whatever makes you feel most comfortable.
Absolutely. At the same time, I think it has to be formal. Like you want to respect your audience. You want to honor them by maybe standing out a little from what they would be wearing. And it's fun being a performer because you really can dress up. You're allowed. You're the stars. So you can really, rock it any way you want.
Yeah. And people are looking to you maybe to influence their style.
Trying to figure out what it is what your look is. There was a couple songs that got picked up. The Ducks, another band from Canada. As I looked on Wikipedia, the description is like, this is an album of Irish folk favorites. And then there's Kat Goldman as a songwriter on the album. Like, well, oh, okay.
I mean, it was just wild, the whole thing. One of the first songs I put on my very first recording, which was on a cassette tape, was Annabelle, a song I wrote very early on in my career about my grandmother who had passed away. It was a folk ballad. A guy who bought that cassette tape at one of my shows then gave the song or played it for James Keelahan, who's recognized as a great folk songwriter in Canada. James then passed on the song to the Ducks, who I guess at the time had just formed as a band out of Winnipeg. And I received an email from Leonard Podolak from the Ducks, the lead of the Ducks, saying, just to let you know, we've just covered your song Annabelle on our new album, and congratulations or whatever. And I thought, wow, great, somebody appreciates the song. And wouldn't you know, they started touring everywhere, all around the world, and people we're hearing Annabelle, from Europe to Australia to the, southern United States. I mean, all over the place. And I was able to gain sort of a little bit of fame from this one song, that they covered, a folk song, no less.
Annabelle, Annabelle, where did you go? I've looked high and I've looked low. I've looked low and I've looked high. Tell me, where does the spirit go when you die? Oh, where does the spirit go when you die? I have packed your satin gloves and lace, all the pictures of your pretty face, and I kept the ones of you on skates, and a picture from your wedding day.
So that was pretty cool. And it then later aired on Hell on Wheels, which is a television series. I believe it was the Ducks version of the song, but you can also find my version of it on YouTube. It's had something like 85,000 views, the song, which is incredible.
Well, you touched on promoting your CD, but now we're in the streaming era. Is your music available on Spotify and Apple Music? And
it is. It's available on iTunes and Spotify and all those places. I have 4 albums altogether. The first one from 2002 up to 2017.
I saw them all on Spotify this morning. I was listening. Really, really enjoyed it.
I even discovered the Tufts a cappella band from Tufts University.
Oh, wow.
Did a cover of Annabelle. I have no idea how they got hold of the song.
Well, that's the same way you turned to Joni Mitchell. They somehow came across this song. Maybe it was from the Ducks or who knows, but it reaches them and, it touched them. And now they're covering it, much like I'm sure you were covering Joni Mitchell songs.
Yes, exactly. That's true. Yeah, no, it's really exciting. It really is. My hit song.
And Dar covered a song of yours too, right? Did she?
Yeah, that was extraordinary.
Right.
She did a cover of my song Weight of the World, which can be found on my second album, Sing Your Song. Unbelievable. I think Dar mentioned that she wanted to cover it about 4 or 5 years before she actually did. And while I was doing my degree in Boston, she got in touch and said, we're doing it. In fact, she actually called me that morning and said, can you teach me the chords? Because we're going into the studio today and I don't know how to play it. And I think what happened was one of her bandmates ended up playing the guitar for it. But yeah, she put it on her album Emerald.
Yeah.
And that was truly extraordinary because she is so prolific that, I figure she doesn't have to cover other people's songs, so that was a real honor.
You wanna take it off, it's the weight of the world. You wanna set it free, just for today. Can't always be the one to heal everything, and the weight of the world was never yours to keep.
Must be an honor. I can't imagine somebody feeling, that connected to something that I might put out. Yeah.
It was very exciting for me. Very exciting.
That's one. Has she read your book yet? Do you know?
No, I should send her a copy. Yeah. Yeah. I figure she must be so busy. I don't know, but I should get in touch.
Yes. Of course. Come on. It's promote. I read somewhere that it's always about promoting.
You're right. Okay, good. Thank you. Will you be my manager?
David, you're really good about that. I'm more on the Kat side. I find it harder to, it comes natural great. Otherwise, just, to get in your face is hard.
Give a shout out to who did those drawings in your book because they're wonderful.
Nina Berkson. She is wonderful. She lives in Montreal. She's also Canadian. And apparently her illustrations have been, I think, on several, if not about 4 of the New York Magazine covers. You might recognize her work from the New York Magazine.
Her style looks
Yeah.
familiar to me. Yeah.
So that was really fun, getting her to illustrate the book, and I think she did a great job. We met actually over the phone recently, and it was really nice to connect with her. She, in fact, I'm hoping might illustrate my next book, which would be fun.
Yeah, it really adds to the personality of the book, and it's really nice.
Wait till she finds out she's going to illustrate the sex pictures.
Right. Yeah, what is life on the road for a singer-songwriter? I would think it's lonely, but then apparently there's those rock and roll moments.
It's true. It's really a combination of both. You can have amazing fun times and meet great people, or you could be stuck in minus 30-degree winter in the prairies near Manitoba and like knocking on a farmhouse door for directions, It's both. And I know some people who just drive back and forth across the country and they just do it. I find it very hard at this point for me to tour that way. But also my tour route for many years was sort of Toronto, Boston, New York. So it wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
But I know songwriters who will drive across Canada and back, which is real dedication. And my hat goes off to them.
So the West Coast, you didn't do the West Coast much?
I've never played Los Angeles. I've never played in BC. But maybe I will one day. We'll see.
You got to come out here. I mean, it's opening up. We got to, can play the Hotel Cafe or something.
I'd love that.
You mentioned your spine. Is that from the accident that you had? Is that still an issue?
I have a terrible back from carrying canoes when I was 16, 17 years old.
You are so Canadian.
Those Canadians, they're always carrying canoes, heavy 80-pound canoes, and I slipped a couple discs, and ever since then I've had a crappy back. And then I was crushed in a bagel store. So fine, don't worry, I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
It's bad, but I thank God for Advil for arthritis. It's my new love. Advil for arthritis.
Oh, you rock stars and your drugs, I tell you.
I know. Heavy.
Have you fully recuperated from, I know it's been 10, 15 years?
Yeah, it's been like about 16, 17 years since my accident, which I also talk about in the book. I made quite a great recovery. I'm having some issues now with that leg. I might be having some surgery again soon for it, but hopefully nothing too bad.
Can't be worse than what you've experienced.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking. I was standing inside a bagel bakery and I heard a loud explosion. And before I could even, turn my head around to see what was going on, I was being crushed by a car that went through the window. And my knee was broken and some soft tissue injuries elsewhere. But they rushed me to the hospital. It was like something from a movie. It was just unbelievable.
You managed to keep your sense of humor about it. A couple of funny things about remembering the bagels that you were picking up at the time. And
that's right. I actually, as I was waiting for the ambulance to come and as I was being crushed, I think the cashier screamed out, "Just wait, the ambulance is on its way," or the ambulance is coming, don't move. And then I yelled out to her, "Can you please make me a bagel with cream cheese to go? Because I haven't eaten anything all day and I'm, going to be waiting at the hospital." And I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe it's because I'm Jewish. My instinct was to ask for a bagel and cream cheese.
Of course.
Food to go in case I get hungry later.
Right.
Was it difficult to dredge up those memories to write it again? You have to go through it again and again and again to.
Such a good question. The publisher wanted to hear more of my story mixed in with the blog. So I figured I have to tell the story about the bagel accident. Mm-hmm. And it was very challenging to write it. I started it many times. I think I wanted to avoid depressing people. I didn't want it to be too depressing, but I also wanted to, to talk about what really happened. So I tried to throw in the jokes, but also, describe what really took place, which is sort of hard to believe. I mean, it was like 1 in a million, that you'd be crushed inside of a bagel store by a car, buying bagels for your band, because I was on my way to a recording session and they were all waiting for me.
Yeah.
I remember when they took me onto the stretcher, I remember thinking, we've got to tell the band what's going on because they're waiting for me. They're gonna be mad at me because I'm late.
It's Jewish guilt right there.
Yeah. Yes.
Exactly.
No, the Jewish guilt comes out when you said you still had to pay them for the session afterward,
That's
and you
right.
went to go see them.
That's right. I still had to pay them for the session. God damn it. Those musicians. They got to get paid, even though you got crushed by a car in a bagel store buying bagels for them. They still want to get paid. Yeah.
Did any of them continue to play with you after recovering? And
I was working with a producer at the time who was encouraging me to get back to the recording after my surgery and during my recovery. But we sort of ended up not working with it just wasn't the right connection between him and myself, and I think it also just wasn't the right time to make that album. And then eventually it became my second album, Sing Your Song, which came about 2 years after the accident.
Can I ask you a personal question, which is kind of relevant? And please, if you don't want to talk about it, I understand. But you made mention of falling into a depression and coming out of it a couple of times. How did you come out of it?
I think it's good we're all talking about depression now. I think depression is something I've suffered from since I was 17. Very severely, acute depressions. And at the time, I didn't even know what was happening to me. I didn't even know it had a word. So I suffered very much in private. I think a lot of artists suffer from mental illness and depression, and songwriters and musicians. The more I talk to people, the more I realize I'm not alone. I got lucky for many years through my 20s and 30s. They tried me on many different kinds of medications that were just awful, had awful side effects, and I wasn't being successfully treated. But when I moved to Boston to do my degree at age 40, I finally worked with a doctor in Boston who got me on a terrific cocktail of antidepressive meds, which I'm still on today.
The argument for not going off it, as people often do.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's so dangerous if you're someone who needs to be on these meds, it's dangerous to think that you don't need them.
Yeah.
Because I've made that mistake. When I, crashed after the Working Man's Blues album, I thought to myself, oh, well, I don't need these anymore, really. I mean, so I went off of all my medication. Big mistake. Ended up in the emergency for 6 hours, with suicidal thoughts and the whole thing. I think you have to be a really strong person if you have mental health issues. You just have to be so strong. I think songwriting has been a kind of therapy for me over the years. And no, I thank my medication every day. I kiss the bottle. I thank whoever created these pills because I can actually function like a human now, So, and I don't think it's true that if you are treated for depression that suddenly your creativity stops. I just don't think that's true. I've been creative in depressions and on medication as well. In fact, I think I've done some of my best work on my medication. So
You'd be the poster child. Thank you for bringing it, because we know way too many people going through, something now, but also, over the course of their lifetime. So
yes, yeah. Well, I'm happy to talk to them. For anyone who struggles, it's a terrible thing to struggle with.
Sorry, I took you down a little.
No, that's quite all right, because I mean it's obvious.
Hard to lighten the mood a little.
Well, I was just about to say, you have done your best, some of your best work, because we just read Off the Charts, and it's a wonderful read. It was a quick read, maybe a little too quick. Kat, we need an extended remix, possibly. Apparently.
Well,
yeah.
Well,
yes,
I read it again. I read it twice.
you did?
Yes,
Oh,
I did.
I'll pay you your $50
you
later.
go.
Stay tuned for the sequel. That's all I can say. It's called Off the Charts, What I Learned from My Almost Fabulous Life in Music. And you can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Your bookstore will have it.
All right.
Anywhere you buy books, it can be
Anywhere you
found.
buy books, yeah.
Today is the release of my new book about dating rock stars and how to find your look, about the life of a songwriter and how to write a song, what to do if your microphone's not on, trying not to make your banter go too long. You can get it on Amazon. Today's my book release.
And your website, where is that? Where do we find you?
My website is katgoldman.ca, I believe.
Canadian.
I really should check on that, shouldn't I?
Yeah, you should not end that with a
find you,
question
we'll
mark.
confirm.
I think, come on, this is the basic stuff.
Yeah, come on.
Come on, you need your patter. What's the banter? You know what to you.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Thank you, Kat.
So
This was
much for
great.
having me.
It was really nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Nice to talk to you too. Thank you guys for having me.
Again, Off the Charts by Kat Goldman. By the way, I love the title because has a lot of different meanings. Did you have the title first, or was it did it come afterwards?
Well, the blogs were called The Disgruntled Songwriter. I wanted the book to be called The Disgruntled Songwriter, but I think it wasn't upbeat enough or something. So the publisher picked the title, which is cool with me. I liked it.
All right. Well, then there you go. Shout out to the publisher. Good job with the title. I like it. I liked it a lot.
Thank you. So
All
much.
right. Well, thank you, Kat. Thank you. This was wonderful.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Take care. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you, Kat.
Okay, so that was great learning a little bit about a singer-songwriter from Canada named Kat Goldman.
She's fantastic. I can't tell you how much I loved her book, and I think that this book is great even for people. It's about the music industry and her experiences in the music industry as a singer-songwriter, but she tells such great stories, and her experiences are relevant outside the music industry too, I think. And she's funny and charming, and I really would recommend this book, and it's an easy, quick read.
Yeah, I dug into her catalog after reading the book because I had never heard of any of these songs. She is very talented. It was really nice to kind of discover this, for me, a new singer-songwriter.
And I think she has a career as an author too.
So thank you for tuning in. Where can they follow us, Holly? Those who are fans of the What Difference Does It Make podcast, which we are a part of.
The Pantheon Podcast family.
But in case they want to focus in on what difference does it make, where might one find
One
us?
might find us on Facebook at WDDIM Podcast, on Instagram and Twitter at WDDIM Podcast. Check out our YouTube channel. Please check out our YouTube channel. I am furiously putting up bits and pieces of our podcast, so check us out there. You can find some things you might not hear in the podcast, and go to our website at wddimpodcast.com and sign up for our newsletter. We will only harass you with a newsletter once a month.
Thank you so much for tuning in this week. We will be back next week, as we are every Friday. So until then, this is Dave.
This is Holly.
Check you later.
Over and out.